Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
Misprints in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have always been a pretty cool thing in my opinion. You're frantically opening up your booster pack, wondering what new rare card you now own, and to your surprise, you get a uniquely printed card that's often 100 times more rare than what you expected. It's kind of like winning a contest that you didn't even enter, and it's a really nice treat for us as duelists. But what if I told you that not all misprints were good, that sometimes they could completely change how a card works, how good or bad a card is, or make a card entirely unplayable? Yep, these situations have all happened throughout the years in Yu-Gi-Oh! And in this video, I'll be breaking down my picks for the most noteworthy examples of massive misprint blunders that have ever happened in this game's history. Let me first clarify by saying that while I will be considering both Konami official and unofficial misprints, many unofficial misprints are actually just due to printing process malfunctions and the press not being properly calibrated. Because of this, I will be excluding misprints of the following nature. 1, any card that has any form of text or card art out of place. 2, any card missing a word/name or inappropriate amount of color because of an ink flaw. And finally, 3, test print sheet cards that sometimes appear in the booster packs as well. I'm excluding these type of misprints because they happen way too often, and if I didn't exclude them, nearly every card could be eligible for the list. So with the rules in place and our introductions out of the way, welcome to the top 10 biggest and craziest Yu-Gi-Oh! Misprint blunders of all time, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. Number 10, Monster of Theseus, non-tuner misprint. Let's get this list started with the most powerful monster of 2017, Kappa. Well, according to Konami, it was supposed to be anyways. Monster of Theseus ended up being completely overhyped, again, by Konami, and was overall a major disappointment. That is, unless you lived in basically every region outside of the United States or Canada in the TCG. In that case, you probably thought that you were just straight up getting trolled, as the original Italian, French, Spanish, and other printings of the card from Raging Tempest were apparently not even tuners. You know, the one thing that makes the card unique and somewhat worth using? I almost feel like it's fairly ironic, the fact that Konami R&D oversold the card so much, and yet they couldn't even bother to print it correctly. Number 9, Destiny Hero Plasma, terrible grammar misprint. Remember when you were in elementary school and you first learned how to write a proper essay? You learned what a rough draft was, basically your first attempt at trying to write something that usually is full of mistakes and grammatical errors. Well, Plasma's first printing in the 2007 collectible 10s Wave 1 was basically a rough draft version. The second half of the effect reads as follows. This card gains equal to half the attack of the equipped monster. While this card is face up on the field, negate all the effect of face up effect monster your opponent controls. This text is like an English teacher's worst nightmare. There are missing words, missing letters, and to be completely honest, it really looks like they didn't proofread the card before submitting it for publication. Sometimes misprints are uncontrollable errors, but this happened because of straight up laziness. Number 8, Elemental Hero Wild Edge, Fusion Material Misprint. It should go without saying that during the GX era, Konami pushed Elemental Heroes super hard, and just about every crappy fusion Jaden summoned in the anime ended up being an ultra rare in a core booster set. Wild Edge, of course, was no different and was released in Elemental Energy in that very rarity. The interesting thing here is, unlike a lot of the cards on this list, Wild Edge didn't see its misprint in its initial printing. In fact, that wouldn't come until 2 years later in the Duelist Pack Jaden Yuki 2, and it was specifically in relation to the big guy's fusion materials. This version of the card required Elemental Hero Wild Heart and Elemental Hero Edgeman. That might not sound all that weird at first until I point out that Elemental Hero Edgeman is totally not a real card. What they were looking for was Elemental Hero Blade Edge. Somehow, Edgeman, which is the literal translation for the Japanese name for Blade Edge, found its way onto the card. How exactly this happened when they already had printed the card twice with no issues is still a mystery to this day. Number 7, Ocean Dragon Lord Neo Daedalus, non-Nami misprint. This one was actually a really huge deal that threatened to completely shape the competitive meta. During the GX era, it was quite common for most structure deck boss monsters to basically be unplayable garbage. Vampire Genesis, Infernal Flame Emperor, etc. They were all really high attack monsters with pretty strong effects, but they were nearly impossible to summon. Nothing like the ultimate Conductor Tyrannos, ABC, Buster Dragons, and Dark Laws of today's game. Because of this, many were in complete disbelief when the Structure Deck Fury from the Deep was first released, for you see, the first printing of Neo Daedalus was not a Nami monster. This meant that it could be normal summoned or monster reborn from the graveyard. This was incredible because its effect allowed you to send Umi from your side of the field to the graveyard to nuke all cards in both players' hands and field except itself. Basically, it was Chaos Emperor Dragon but for water decks, and it actually survived its own destruction. Sadly, this was too good to be true, as duelists soon learned that this thing could only be summoned from the hand by first tributing the level 7 Leviathan Dragon Daedalus from the field first, thus making it a lot less attractive and not very viable for the competitive meta. Number 6, Counter Counter and Metalmorph, wrong trap type misprints. I would probably say that Counter Counter is easily the most memorable typing misprint the game has ever seen, and it's for a pretty obvious reason. Counter Counter, as its name suggests, is a counter trap designed specifically to be used against other counter traps. While Yu-Gi-Oh! Did already have a pair of these cards that could accomplish the same feat in Solemn Judgment and 7 Tools of the Bandit, both which were released very early on in the game's history in the second set Metal Raiders, Counter Counter required you to pay no life points for your negation. Obviously, it was a complete shame when the card was first released in Tactical Evolution, and about half the copies in the game were not actually counter traps, which just didn't make any sense because it would have meant that the card would not be able to be legally activated. Obviously, being a spell speed 2, you cannot chain to a spell speed 3 counter trap. Metalmorph wasn't quite as dire of a situation, but it was a lot stranger. Metalmorph was first released in 2007's premium pack as a super and ultra rare, and it was a fairly niche card made somewhat popular by the DM anime. It gave your monster a small stat boost and the ability to get significantly stronger if you attacked an opponent's monster. The problem was the initial versions were printed as continuous traps. This meant that even if the monster your Metalmorph was equipped to was destroyed, the Metalmorph itself would never be, and it would stick on the field, pointlessly clogging up your spell and trap zone. The strange part was when Upper Deck and Konami fixed the issue, which wasn't for 2.5 years later, by the way. When they finally did print the correct version of Metalmorph, they completely changed the artwork of the card. It's almost like they wanted you to forget that the old one even existed. Number 5, Book of Secret Arts and Sword of Dark Destruction, missing art misprints. I still haven't figured out how exactly these happen, but I suspect it has something to do with the fact that in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially at the beginning of the DM era, quality control was like non-existent in Yu-Gi-Oh! Thankfully, these misprints didn't actually affect the functionality of the cards in any way. Instead, both Book of Secret Arts and Sword of Dark Destruction just have very noticeable items or visual effects omitted in their card art. This would be completely expected if this was due to Western censorship, as we often see in the TCG, but that actually wasn't the case at all. The feather in Book of Secret Arts is simply missing from many of the early printings, as well as the sword's aura in Sword of Dark Destruction. To me, this kind of makes these misprints feel like budget versions of the card rather than the typical opposite. Number 4, Rainbow Dragon and Elemental Hero Chaos Neos, ghastly ghost rare mix-up misprints. To be honest, I'm really not sure how to explain this one, mainly because the same misprint affects 2 completely different cards and spans across 2 sets. Like, how the hell does that even happen? Jesse's Rainbow Dragon was the cover card for Tactical Evolution, and Jaden's Elemental Hero Chaos Neos was the cover card for Gladiator's Assault the following set. Somehow in the printing process, there was a major mix-up that caused many copies of Ghost Rare Rainbow Dragons to have Chaos Neos in the artwork, and for many copies of the Ghost Rare Chaos Neos to have Rainbow Dragon appear in the title rather than its own name. This misprint only affected the Ghost Rare rarities of these 2 cards and not the secret rares, which makes these among the most expensive misprints in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 3, Diamond Direwolf, Murmur-Abystius, Murmur-Abyss Lead, and other secret rares from Cosmo Blazer, German holofoil misprints. This is actually the biggest example of a new age giant misprinting era in Yu-Gi-Oh! For the most part, by the time Konami fully took over the TCG from Upper Deck during the 5Ds era, a lot of the crazy misprint happenings had been cleaned up, but this one from Zexal really takes the cake. If you were in Germany when Cosmo Blazer was released, then you already know this all too well, but for everybody else, just know that a good portion of the secret rares from that set and the German printings had their backgrounds of other secret rare cards in the set. This means that on many of the secret rare copies of Diamond Direwolf, Well, for example, you can see the shadow and the outline of Noble Knight Medrat, another secret rare from Cosmo Blazer. This massive misprint, to my knowledge, only affected the German print run of Cosmo Blazer and only this specific rarity, but basically all the secret rares are affected. Number 2, Neos Wisemen, Fusion Monster Misprint. This is definitely another example of someone being asleep at the wheel. Either that or somebody went full on weeb mode and decided that staying true to the anime was more important than having a playable version of the card. If you never watched the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, you might not know that certain monsters on this show are a completely different mechanic than what we actually got in the physical card game. Alexis's Cyber Angels are a prime example of that. Fusion in the anime, but ritual in real life. Well, Neos Wisemen is pretty much the same deal. In the GX anime, it's a fusion monster. However, in real life, it's just a basic effect monster. That is everywhere except Korea. That's right, the first printing in Premium Pack Volume 6 has this bad boy printed as a full-on fusion monster because screw the rules, we need continuity between the anime and the actual TCG, damn it. Honorable mentions include Goblin Attack Force from Pharaoh's Servant, which has a level star under its attribute, Morphing Jar from the Italian Championship Pack that was printed as a level 3 monster, and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon from the Gold Series, which has the wrong defense points. And finally, to our number 1, Dark Paladin, Magician's Force Wrong Art Misprint. I was in high school when this happened, and obviously I've played the game for forever, but even to this day, this is still one of the most bizarre things that I can ever remember happening. As I've said before, and as you probably should have realized by now, in the first 2 eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! Quality control was extremely low on the game, and that's why stuff like this happened. In this very special circumstance in North America, the original prints of Yugi's Dark Paladin, which was the cover card for Magician's Force, by the way, was actually released using the alternate artwork, which Upper Deck intended to be exclusively used with the promotional version of the card for the new product, the Duel Master's Guide. It's important to know that the Duel Master's Guide was a completely different product that they planned on releasing after Magician's Force, but people weren't really enthused to buy it because the Dark Paladin artwork was pretty much already out there at this point. When the unlimited printing of Magician's Force was released, Upper Deck actually switched back to the original intended art. This meant that there were 2 completely different artworks of Dark Paladin within the same core booster set. Like, how crazy is that? This is in fact the only time that this has ever happened in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. So that is my list, and I want you guys to let me know how I did in the comment section below. If there were any other big misprint blunders that I missed out on, also leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos and check out these other videos I know you'll enjoy.
Subscribing makes life happy.